Okay, good afternoon everybody. My name is Nicola Aylward. I'm Head of Learning for Young People at the Learning and Work Institute. Welcome to this webinar and thanks very much for joining us. The webinar is about providing good support to young adult carers in further education. The aim of the webinar is really to provide insight into the needs and experiences of young adult carers and some really practical examples of ways in which learning and skills providers can support young adult carers to engage in learning and achieve their potential. So I'm going to begin by providing some context and background information, and then we're going to have a number of short inputs followed by a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So Learning and Work Institute's programme of work with young adult carers started in around 2008. The overall aim of the work is really to enable young adult carers to make positive and sustained transitions and to engage in learning and to succeed in learning. The work developed from a small piece of research which showed that between the ages of 16 and 24, young adult carers are at risk of dropping out of learning at these key transition points. So our work with young adult carers has a number of strands really. We raise awareness of the needs and experiences of young adult carers and the challenges that they face in accessing learning and employment. We work with a range of providers across the learning, skills and care sector to improve the direct support that's available to young adult carers. And finally, we work at policy level with the aim of ensuring that national, local and organisational policy supports rather than prevents young adult carers from engaging in learning. So in terms of some context, who are young adult carers? Young adult carers are young people between the ages of 16 and 24 who provide regular care on an unpaid basis. Data from the 2011 census showed that there are just over 314,000 young adult carers in England and Wales. This equates to around 1 in 20 16 to 24-year-olds having caring responsibilities. Our analysis shows that these young people provide approximately £5.5 billion per year in unpaid care. So they make a huge and valuable contribution to their families, to local communities and to society in general. However, in terms of the numbers, most researchers working in this field believe that the true number of young adult carers is much higher than the 314,000 identified through the census. There are a number of reasons for this. Firstly, many young people simply don't identify themselves as carers. Particularly if they've been caring from quite a young age, it's just something they've grown up with, it's the situation within their family, it's nothing different, so many don't identify. Another reason why we think the figures are probably not accurate is that many young adult carers and their families are reluctant to disclose caring responsibilities. There is often fear of intervention from outside services, which can be perceived as threatening, and young adult carers quite commonly experience bullying, stigma and discrimination. So it's widely believed that the true number of young adult carers is much higher, probably closer to around 600,000 rather than the 314,000 identified through the census. The types and amount of care that young people provide varies significantly. However, again, the 2011 census showed that around 1 in 10 young adult carers provide care for 50 hours or more per week. Young people care for people with all types of health conditions, physical, mental, drug and alcohol dependency. They provide practical support, which is things like administering medication, help with personal care, such as washing and going to the toilet. They provide help with household tasks, so things like shopping, cleaning and managing household finances. They provide emotional support and often deal with external agencies and services, such as GPs, benefits agencies and social services. Most young people care for a parent, but many also provide care for younger siblings and other members of their families, such as grandparents. Being a young adult carer can have a huge impact upon a young person. It can affect their attendance at school and college. It can result in them becoming isolated from friends and peers. It can result in, excuse me, it can result in low confidence, self-esteem, and feeling of being trapped with little hope or aspiration for the future. I'd now like to show you this infographic, which we've developed here at Learning and Work Institute, which I think quite effectively highlights the situation that young adult carers find themselves in, and many of the challenges that they face. I won't go through everything that's represented on the infographic, but just one or two things to draw to your particular attention. So young adult carers are 3 times as likely to be NEET, not in education, employment or training, than other young people of the same age. On average, they achieve 9 lower GCSE grades than their peers, which is the difference between 9 Cs and 9 Ds at GCSE. And young adult carers are quite heavily disadvantaged in the workplace due to disruption resulting from caring. So they lose an average of 17 working days and experience disruption to 79 days each year because of their caring responsibilities at home. So all of these factors are really the driver for our work with young adult carers. It's very much about raising awareness, putting practical support in place, and bringing about policy change that enables young adult carers to engage and succeed in learning, and achieve their potential in the same way that other young people have the right to this. We will be sharing the infographic with you and some other resources, so we can send that to you. I'd now like to ask Charlotte, please, to play a short film. It's a young adult carer named Emily Hicks, who is talking about her experiences of caring as a young person.
I've cared for my mum all the way from 8 years old, and like I say, it has got worse and then better. And with bipolar, it's a very unpredictable kind of thing. One day she would be absolutely fine, the next day, if she'd not slept well, she could be absolutely high as a kite, or really, really, really low. Usually when she was low, that would be worse, but also when she was high, she would put music on at 3-4 o'clock in the morning when I was going to go to college the next day. I was meant to be going to school, so then I would be up trying to get her back to bed, as well as the other family members, and it would affect me the next day because I wouldn't go to sleep, and then I'd be going to school or college absolutely exhausted. I did have a supportive family where me and my sister and my stepdad did work with each other, but the caring role was, very much on me. In secondary school, it really did hit hard. I was doing the shopping, financial support for family, trying to get bills paid. School did pick it up and they give me a little bit of support. I had meetings and I had counselling. When I went to college, well, the support wasn't really there that much actually. And with me being late and things, believe it or not, they'd stop my EMA. So I wouldn't get my EMA because I was late because my mum had been being upset the night before, so I then turned in late to college. So yeah, I didn't have any money, so I left and then went to access course. I should have only taken like 13, 14 months, however it ended up taking nearly 24. Like I say, my mum has good patches, bad patches. First year was quite good. Second year was absolutely horrendous. I was coming home every weekend. That was financially a problem again, because then I was working in Manchester, so I'd have to finish work in Manchester, I'd have to come home, and then finally, third year, got to grips with everything, because I didn't do very well in my second year. My third year, got my grades up, my mum was okay, so yeah, it was all worked out well in the end, and I've got my degree, and I've got 2-1 now, so that's fantastic. My whole life now is around care. I went to college to do childcare, and then I went in to do social care as a degree. So everything really has boiled down to what I've been doing with my mum and the passion that I've had for being a carer and where that's led me. I've worked for the Policy Forum. I have a job within care now and it's paid quite well. I volunteer for the Young Carers Centre. So yeah, I definitely do think being a carer for my mum has been very, very positive. Yeah.
Thank you, Charlotte. So I think that film just really highlights the range of challenges that young adult carers typically face, and the practical impact that that has upon their ability to go to school, go to college, and access the same opportunities as other young people. But I also think Emily really clearly draws out that there are lots of valuable skills that are developed through being a young adult carer, and we need to celebrate those as well. I'm pleased to say that Emily has now moved on from volunteering with her local carer service to being a paid young adult carer support worker. So, you know, she's done fantastically well at overcoming the barriers she faced. She's progressed through learning, and she now has a full-time paid job that she loves. But I think it's also important to highlight that that's not the case for all young adult carers. Many become really trapped within the caring role, and therefore find it really difficult to engage in learning and access those opportunities. I'd now like to hand over to Laura Archer. Laura is the Learner Achievement Coach Team Leader at Central College in Nottingham, and Laura's going to tell us a bit about the provision that Central College has developed. Over to you, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. So, as Nicola said, my name's Laura Archer and I work at Central College in Nottingham. I have to apologise because we had a bit of an issue with the presentation, so I'm reading it off my phone to you on the screen. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've worked at the college now for about 15 years. We have the role of the Learner Achievement Coach team. It's been in its current format for 5 years, but been going for about 10. We have about 4,500 full-time students across the college as a whole, and on average we work with about 30% of the students at some point through the year. I have a team of 22 staff and they're based in all the curriculum areas across the whole college, and we work with every level from sensory right through to HE. The remit of the Learner Achievement Coach team is to support retention, and that's for any educationally vulnerable group within the college, and part of that is around carers. I think it's really useful for a lot of education places though, so some of the strategies that I'll talk about are transferable to lots of different groups of vulnerable students. So other categories we work with include those that are looked after or leaving care, those who are involved with the yacht or the criminal justice system, those that may be homeless or having any other sort of issues at home that we can help them deal with to be able to access their learning. So first of all, and Charlotte is going to be my glamorous assistant in this because I can't open the things up, what I wanted to talk to you about was how we identify the students that we support. Initially, we tried to do some data analysis, but what we found is the data didn't really tell us anything. There is no type of carer, particularly at our college. It's pretty even split between males and females. Again, a pretty even split with age groups. The most popular, the most common groups that are cared for tend to be mums. But we have carers in every curriculum area across the college. There's no real surprise that there tend to be more access in health and social care provision or on access courses, and that's generally because they're older and maybe mums or dads themselves or have elderly parents that they care for. Along with that then, so how do we identify carers? I get asked this a lot about how do we know who these vulnerable groups are, and some information we can get from enrolment or application forms, but as I'm sure those of you that have to deal with them appreciate, they're quite a long document anyway. So what we did, we came up with a bit of a crazy idea and we thought we'd ask students themselves. So we put together an induction questionnaire, which I think, thank you. So as part of the induction process, we go out and deliver an induction session to every single group across the college. And with this, we try and identify the softer areas that we can't pick up through any of the other ways. And there's three main parts to this. The first part is about their background. So have they been NEET? Have they had support in college before? What have they been doing? Is there anything that's affected their learning? The middle section is really where we can pick up around, particularly around carers. So we ask the direct question about, do you have caring responsibility? But also around things like, who do they live with? And for us, this has been a real big indicator of those that may have caring responsibility, particularly where there's been a breakdown at home, and they may be living with grandparents or elderly family members that they don't even see themselves as having a caring responsibility for. Again, we ask about if they're a parent, do they have contact with children, those sorts of things. One of the things that we found really important, though, was not just to give out the questionnaire, but was to talk through the process while the students were completing it, so that they knew why we were asking the information and what we were going to do with it. So it's really important to sort of sell the side of we might be able to access extra financial help for them, to liaise with tutors, to make it feel that it's safe and it's okay for them to tell us about any support needs that they may have. So how else do we support carers? I think that's on my other picture, Charlotte. Okay, so this outlines all of the process about how we identify them initially. So early agency referrals, schools, whatever. And for those of you that are from care organisations, all I can ask is the more we know before somebody starts at a college, the more help that we can give them. So I think supporting people to disclose that information when they apply or go for an interview, we can put things in place before they start. What we've tried to move away from or to overcome is the issue that usually the first indicator there's a problem is when someone's attendance is dropped off and they haven't been in for 3 or 4 weeks, and then trying to re-engage them with the course can be really difficult. So the earlier that we have any information about any of our vulnerable students, the more we can do to support them. So we promote and work with a lot of external agencies. There's the application and enrolment process. Like I discussed, there's the induction questionnaire that we do. And from this, that will generate an initial one-to-one. So we'll go and have a conversation with the student. We've got a care questionnaire that then we do with them, which goes into a lot more detail about their caring responsibility, the types of care they have to give, and how they feel it might impact on their learning. And that can be quite important because some people will see college as an opportunity for a fresh start. So they don't really want to think about being a carer. They want to try and give college a go. Other people may need some adjustments putting in from the start of the course. What we always try and get through to the students, and what we try to work them with though, is about reasonable adjustments. So what can we put in place to make sure you can access your study? However, it's not a get out of jail free card. And it doesn't mean if you are a carer or any of the other vulnerable groups that you never have to attend college, because unfortunately you do. But what we do try and work with is to see what strategies they can put in place. So it may be, is there a neighbour that might be able to do a visit at lunchtime? Is there some care, external care that they may be able to get in to come and help them at home? And we can work with them to put those things in place. And hopefully that will support them then for when they go into work or into higher education, so that they can access that without the worry of having to worry what's going on at home. With all of our students, we write a support plan, and that's shared with tutors and anyone else that's involved with the student. So everybody's very clear on what's agreed. A key one might be that someone needs to either start late or finish early. So we'll work out what is reasonable, say if it's 9:15 instead of a 9 o'clock start. But after that, they are still marked down late. It doesn't mean that they can still turn up at 10:30 unless there's a really good reason for it. And then the other thing is to review that support regularly. We keep an eye on things like their attendance, are they keeping up to date with their work, and any other support things that might indicate there's a problem. What we also try and discuss with the student in that is around sort of a crisis plan. So things might be fine and everything's going great and there's no issues at home. I know from speaking to Emily before, there's good times and there's bad times. And you can't always predict when the bad periods are going to be, but when it happens, to try and keep in touch with college so that we can get work sent home or keep them engaged, so it's not such a massive problem to be able to come back into college when they're able to. We do lots and lots of different strategies for support, as you can see. So there's transition visits. It might just even be, how do I get from my house into college? Can I get home quickly if I need to? Can I pick up my brothers and sisters from school if I have to? What's the bus route? So we can do a lot of transition visits. The majority of our work is one-to-one support. We do some in-class support, but we're not the same as the traditional ALS, so we wouldn't go in and support with dyslexia or anything. It's if work needs, if they need help catching up with work, things like that. As I discussed, we do the crisis plans. So what is the plan? And again, things like that transfer to parents. So they might not have no issue, but child takes ill, they've got no alternative childcare, so they can't get in for 2 weeks. So again, it's about just trying to keep people engaged as best as we can. We liaise a lot with internal services, so we do a lot of work with our student finance team. We ask on the application for student finance if anyone has caring responsibility. And as part of that, if they do, they will get additional financial support. So things like a bus pass, meal vouchers, if they need any additional help with costs for their course, for specific kit or things like that. We liaise with tutors. Some are more responsive to that than others, but certainly around if we need to negotiate new deadlines, if we need to negotiate start and end times, we try and mediate and be the nice person to put to the tutors up to work with that. And then a big part of our work is working with external services. And for us, it's really important because I think sometimes as education providers, we're expected to deal with an awful lot of things. We're expected to be social services, we're expected to be GPs, we're expected to be the NHS, we're expected to deal with a lot of these other external support services. And really what we need to try and do is encourage the young people to engage with those external services, because generally what will happen is the first thing someone will drop is college. And if they're not with us, we can't help them anymore. The other thing we can't do, we don't do home visits or do that support in the home and that holistic support that is often needed. So trying to sort of be that link and supporting the young people to engage with the external services, we do a lot, particularly in Nottingham with the Carers Federation. Again, referring sometimes to external services, so whether it might be around drugs, alcohol, GPs, mental health services, and that's supporting both the carers and the cared for. Sometimes we have difficulty, for example, if there's issues with the cared for around mental health or drug or substance misuse, that they might say not be able to get the paperwork that would make them eligible for their student finance. So we can put in some support around that and make sure that they're getting what they need to help them access college. We've tried various different support groups as well within the college. So we use Facebook as a support mechanism. We're spread over quite a lot of sites, so it's quite difficult to get all of the carers in one room at the same time to talk about being a carer. So we try and use peer support and buddy systems and different things that work across all of the different sites. What other bits have we got? So that's kind of the support package that we offer. In terms of impact and the difference it makes, it's a really difficult position to be in, because on the one hand, it's about sort of playing the corporate game really, and it's about impact data and the so what. And that's something that we've been quite effective at doing over the years. So we're all in the student services work because we want to help young people, but we need to prove that it's having an impact and improving retention and improving success. So for the last 5 years, we've shown that we've improved the retention of vulnerable groups, and it's been in line with students across the college. We do this through a comprehensive database. So we track all of our work with all of our students, and it enables us to be able to pull off the data to support what we're doing. There are occasions where with some young people or any carers that they are not able to carry on with college at that time. And what we try and hope is that we've given them a positive experience so that when they're ready to be engaged, they're able to come back to college. statistically, it doesn't always look the best, but we know that as support workers that we've been able to offer that support. Like I said, it's about that reasonable adjustment. So hopefully we put things in place so if they decide they want to go to university or into work, that a lot of those support measures are already there to be able to help them when they move on. Like I said, a lot of the support things we do are transferable. So we have specific sheets working with looked after and other vulnerable groups as well. And like I say, it's just that encouraging that disclosure and being able to offer a safe environment so people feel that it's okay. So we have lots of posters up around the college that we've had through the Learning and Working What Was and IAs. So people are quite familiar and see things around carers and things around other groups and feel that it's something that's all right to talk about. Yeah, and that's pretty much what we do, how we do it, and the impact it's made, I think.
Thanks so much, Laura. That's a fantastic contribution and really highlights the comprehensive support that Central College has in place for young adult carers and how effective it is. If it's okay, I'd now like to hand over to Jules Diamond, who is the Welfare and Funding Manager from York College. Jules is now going to talk about the support that York has in place for young adult carers. So over to you, please, Jules. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can all hear me okay today. Let me find my presentation. So my name is Jules, there we go. And yeah, I work at York College. I'm the Welfare and Funding Advisor. And I've been in post for about 10 years. And the support that we've got for our carers, in particular our young adult carers, has improved over time. And certainly when I started, there wasn't a lot available, and we are getting there. The funding aspects, which is what I'm responsible for within my role, is improving significantly. We still have some work to do, I think, in some of the other areas, so it was really good to listen to Laura and listen to what you've been doing. I think we're going to steal a lot of your ideas, Laura, so thank you for that. Oh, right, a bit slow. Okay, so I'm going to go over how we identify our carers, and I think that's probably going to be quite familiar. What our barriers are specifically, how we provide the support that we've got, and the difference that we make to our young adult carers at college. So we identify our carers through a number of different ways. We've got the carer centre come in, and they do a monthly drop-in in a very public and accessible place, and they'll pick up some of our young people. They'll just come and ask questions at the carer centre drop-in, which is absolutely brilliant, and they directly refer students to us as well. So they'll bring students or email students, or email us about a student, or give us a ring about a student that's cropped up with them, or somebody that they know will be transitioning up to college, and they'll contact us in advance, which is really helpful. We also have a direct question on our bursary form, so this is actually the main way that we get information about our young carers, is through the financial side of the support that's available. There'll be a question on the enrolment form next academic year, specifically around identifying carers, so that we can make sure that we're picking them up as quickly and as early as possible. And the students got an option to tell us themselves when they complete their individualised learning plan, and they can do that with or without the tutor. So they might do it within a tutorial, or it might be that they can log on themselves and there's a question on there that asks them about care and responsibilities, and then that's available for all their teaching and support staff to have that information. And we often find that there's a disclosure to a member of staff because there's been an escalation of difficulties at home. So things have got worse, or they're facing some disciplinary issues at college, and that's when we find out something's going on. And we work in to form closer links with our feeder schools, so that the 15-year-olds coming through, 16 when they're with us, they come through with that information, and that's something that we're working on quite a lot at the moment. We've just got another school on board with that. We find the same barriers that you've already heard about. Just not all students who are a carer consider themselves to be a carer. It's just my mum syndrome. So students will say, well, that's it's just what I do. Everybody would do it. It's not anything special. So we struggle a lot with that and trying to make students understand that that's the situation that they're in. It makes it more real. And that's something that we've had in terms of feedback from our carers time and again. So telling somebody else that this is the situation I'm in, admitting it to them and admitting it to yourself makes you realise the situation you're in. And it can be really embarrassing. It can be really difficult being a carer. I'm a carer myself. And it can be really hard sometimes talking about that with somebody else who's outside of that situation. You've already heard sometimes that cared for person doesn't want any other services or anybody else involved, so that becomes a barrier. And for us, one of our big issues actually is that our bursary form is the main source of our identification. And not all students are eligible for a bursary. They might be an apprentice, so they're not even going to apply for a bursary, and they might not get picked up by any other route. The problem there, and the problem with all these barriers, is that sometimes we find out about carers when things have got too far, they've gone too far, they've got too bad. They might be disciplinary for attendance, it might be behaviour, they might be behind in a lot of work, and that's when we find out they've got caring responsibilities, which obviously brings its own problems. In terms of the funding that we provide, then our bursary really can be split into 3 different types. So we've obviously got the guaranteed bursary for young people in care and care leavers and those that get certain benefits. But then our rest of our bursary really is a standard bursary that's available to anybody that meets the income threshold of £25,000 a year, and our enhanced bursary. And that's the bursary that we award to our young adult carers, and actually carers of any age. We don't discriminate. So we fund the older ones as well. And you can see that we're a bit more flexible with household income. We turn very, very few people down. Generally, when they get into around £50,000, obviously that's double our threshold. We would look to see whether that support was really needed on a financial basis. We fund as much travel as we can do, and we don't have a minimum distance. So we had a student lived on, well, the old college site actually, literally around the corner from us. We gave her a bus pass because she was travelling in the other direction to go and pick up her siblings from school. So her daily commute actually to college was a 5-minute walk, but that wasn't realistic for her. She was going in the other direction, picking children up, taking them to school, and then trying to fit in college around that. So by giving her a bus pass so that she could do that more efficiently meant that she could attend college more efficiently as well. So we don't look at minimum distances for our carers, particularly in York. That's quite important for us. We give meal vouchers to everybody who applies who is a carer, regardless of whether they meet the government criteria or not. We help with travel to open days and interviews. We don't really have an upper limit on that. And sometimes we'll fund a parent to go with them as well, which we don't do for our other students, generally speaking. We fund all of their equipment costs. We'll include a printing allowance, which we don't do for many students, so that they can get everything that they need for the course at college. In terms of evidence, we don't chase carers for evidence necessarily. It's better for us if we've got evidence for free school meals because it comes out of another pot, but actually we wouldn't stop an award because we didn't have a piece of evidence for a student. All carers will get their award first, and then if we can get some evidence in, that's great, but it's not going to stop anybody's award. And it's just another way of just being a little bit more flexible, particularly when we've got parents who've got problems with paperwork, parents that don't keep any paperwork, maybe they're not working, but they throw all of the benefits letters away, and all of that kind of information. So we try and be as generous and as flexible basically as we can do, and make it as easy as possible as well. You know, at the end of the day, to give a bursary awards away, all I need is one application form with a name on the front and a signature on the back. You know, if I've got that, I can give an award to an eligible student. So if we can do that for somebody, make their lives a little bit easier, then that's really what we're after. We do provide some pastoral support as well, but certainly not to the extent that Laura does at her college. So that's somewhere we're really looking to expand and put that support in place. But we do offer deadlines, extensions where necessary. Students can keep their phone on in their class and take phone calls, and leave class to take a phone call if necessary as well. We have arranged for students to miss classes either on a regular basis or as an ad hoc basis if their caring responsibilities mean that that's what needs to happen. And obviously importantly, all of our students have got access to specialist support through student services and through our mentoring programme. And specifically, obviously, that's available to our carers as well. We've got the York Carers Centre York Carers card, Young Carers card. It is a tongue twister. The York Carers Centre are happy for us to share this around, and I have already sent it to somebody who was at the event in March. So if you want to, obviously, give us a yell and we can have a look at that, getting that out to you. Basically, this is something that can be filled in with us. It can be filled in. Some of them bring them from school. They are out in all of the colleges and schools in York, in the city. And it's just about saying, I might need a bit of extra something, but I don't want to have that conversation with you, particularly if you're a member of staff that I don't really know. And it just means you don't have to start from scratch every time. You've had that conversation with one member of staff, some details are logged, and then all you need to do is show the card. Again, we don't want people abusing it, but if they've got issues, if something crops up, particularly if you're in crisis or in an emergency, the last thing you want to be doing is starting from the scratch and explaining everything that you've got to go, well, actually, what I need to do really now is just, I need to leave and get on the bus and make a phone call and go. So the idea is that it just makes that a little bit easier for students to get through the day and get through their college time with us. So we do make a difference, we know that, which is great. And our bursary in particular, again, that's the focus of my work, is very, very basic. We get students to college. We get students to college who wouldn't be able to get to college otherwise. They get a meal every day, and actually for some students, do you know what, this is the healthy meal that they'll eat, and they won't eat another meal in the same way. Some students get 2 meal vouchers a day so they can have 2 meals with us as well. They don't have to worry about buying equipment and having access to equipment, because we'll provide them with everything that they need. Really importantly, they can plan for and access any future study, and that goes for work as well, but in particular future study, higher education. They can do that, they can get out there. I've got a young lady working with at the moment, and she's just she's gone from thinking she was going to be trapped in caring for probably a very long time. She's on for triple D star in a diploma. She's got 5 offers from 5 Russell Group universities, and she's going to go on and do a master's, and it's going to be amazing. But she wouldn't have got that without the support, and without being able to plan and confidently plan and visit those universities. It just wouldn't have been there for her. And really importantly, she's not had to worry as much about being able to afford to come here. She lost a carer's allowance to come to college, but she knew that she could get to college. She knew that she could eat while she was here, and she's not had to pay out for anything for a course at all. So although she's lost that money, that weekly allowance through carers, but she's actually been able to afford to come here because of the support that we put in place for her. The pastoral support, that's there to help obviously with attendance and deadlines. We want a supportive system in place, not disciplinary. We don't want to be taking students down disciplinary routes if it's their caring that's affected their attendance and their deadlines. They've got a lot of counselling, practical support. We've got specialist practitioners, and they can come here and they can just focus on being a student. Just focus on being another young person, the same as everybody else, just for a little bit. And that's really important as well for those young people, and they can just be the same as everybody else for a little while. And this is just the student I was just saying about, just one quote from her, that we know that she's really chuffed. We know that the difference that we've made to her, and she's not the only one, but it's just nice to know that what we're doing, what we put in place, and in particular our work with the Carers Centre, really comes together to support these young people to ensure that they can get where they should be going. Well, we're not resting on our laurels. We know that we need to do more. We get about 100 students come through us every year, but we know there's a lot more than that. We just don't find them. So there's definitely more work to do. We're looking about how we can identify those students sooner, earlier, particularly the ones that can't get a bursary, like an apprentice or higher education student. We want to pick them up as soon as possible and put that support in place before we get to the point where actually you really, really need it because it's all gone horribly wrong. We work really closely with York Carers Centre, but actually half of our students don't even live in York. We need to build those relationships with those other carers centres so that when they've got young people who are carers who are coming to York College, then they can, we've got that link already in place, and that support, that information flows through much better. So we're really looking to build those relationships, and hopefully we can do that. And we also recognise, actually, do you know what we put in place for carers is really good, but there's other groups of students that can support as well. So we're making sure that that's also in our policies, and that's also there and available. So young parents in particular, students that are homeless, students whose families are in debt as well. Actually, that's another group that would access that additional bursary. So it's just making sure that wherever we've got a good practice for one group of vulnerable students, that we're also making sure that we move that along to other vulnerable groups as well who need that additional support. So we're happy with what we've done, but we've got a lot of work to go before we get to where we want to be, particularly with the pastoral side of the funding. I know we're doing questions at the end, so I'll leave that for now. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Jules. Another brilliant input. I think what's particularly impressive about York College is the financial support that's available for young adult carers, and that links very well with some of the policy changes that we're advocating for. Also the joining up with the local carers centre, which is obviously crucial in supporting young adult carers to make that transition into further education. So that's great. Thank you ever so much, Jules. I'd now like to hand over to Charlotte Roby, who is a researcher here at the Learning and Work Institute. And Charlotte's just going to speak for a few minutes about some of the resources that we've produced, which we very much hope can help you in supporting young adult carers in learning and employment. So over to you, Charlotte. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola. Okay, hopefully everyone can see the slideshow. Okay, so I'm just going to whiz through some of the resources that we've developed over the last few years. And with all of these, we've tried to work really closely with young adult carers, carer services, learning providers, and any other types of organisation where relevant, to make sure that all of these resources are really practical and tailored to young adult carers' needs. So to start off with, we've got some case studies of effective practice. Both York College and Central College Nottingham are included in this, so I thought that was the most appropriate one to put first. So these were developed a couple of years ago, but they include some really useful ideas for things that colleges in particular can put in place, but also have some ideas of the way that carer services are working with learning providers to improve the support for young adult carers in FE. We've got some briefings on some specific groups of young adult carers who we found through our research have some particular challenges around accessing further education and higher education. So we developed these briefings to help learning providers and other types of organisations put effective support in place for these particular groups. We have the infographic, which Nicola showed you earlier. So this is a relatively new thing, which we developed to give some more visual kind of prompts as to the challenges that young adult carers face, because they said that we needed some more interactive stuff. So this is one way that it became that. Recently we worked with the Carers Trust to develop this guide for further education colleges to help them put support in place for students with caring responsibilities. Again, this has lots of really useful case studies and hints and tips for colleges in particular, but it can be useful for other types of organisations as well, especially universities and carer services. This is a brand new resource that we've just developed. It should be published on our website in the next few weeks. It's a guide for employers to support young adult carers in work, because we're not just working to improve the support for young adult carers in education, but also in the workplace. So we work with young adult carers and employers to develop this guide, which employers can use to improve the support they offer to young adult carers. And along with resources for stakeholders, we've also got a lot of resources aimed directly at young adult carers themselves. So these are some resources that you can use with your students who have caring responsibilities. So we've got the really useful book of learning and earning, the Ruble. This is really popular with young adult carers. We've just developed the 3rd edition. Again, this will be coming out very, very shortly, so keep your eye out for that on our website. It's full of lots of really useful information, as the title suggests, for young adult carers about education and work, but also volunteering, finances, how to get a carer's assessment, lots of different things that they might need to think about when they want to get into FE or HE. We developed these posters, which Laura talked about a bit in her presentation earlier. So we worked with some young adult carers to develop the artwork and the messages around these posters, and have sent them out to all of the FE colleges in England. So if you're from an FE college in England, you should have a set of these knocking around somewhere. So please speak to your student services, they're who we sent them to, and you should be able to put the name and contact for a young adult carers champion, so that the students who have caring responsibilities know exactly who they can go to and get support from. And we also did a separate project looking at careers guidance specifically for young adult carers. So what kind of things they need to think about when considering a career and the types of jobs that they might want to pursue. So we developed a set of what we called Value My Skills cards. These are based on some cards developed by Union Learn, and we adapted them to young adult carers situations, and they help them think about the different skills and competencies they've developed through their caring role, how they can apply them to the world of work, and also what kinds of things they might need to do or put in place to help them engage in work and education as well. And that's it.
That's great, Charlotte, thank you. Okay, back to me. Just to mention that within the next week or so, we will be sending out a bulletin which provides links to all of the resources that Charlotte has just mentioned. So with your permission, we will add you to our mailing list and get that information sent out to you. If you'd rather not receive it, then please just let us know. Okay.
Nicola, shall I just add that if colleagues who have joined and do not wish to receive bulletin can do so through the Eventbrite contact details where they have registered to attend the webinar?
Yes, please. Thank you, Yaya.
But otherwise, we will assume that they'd be happy to hear more.
Absolutely. So I'm now briefly going to touch on the 3 key policy changes that we're campaigning for. All of the policy changes that we're interested in have developed from our work with young adult carers themselves and with support agencies and learning providers. I'm briefly going to mention each of them, then play a short film, which is, again, Emily Hicks, the young adult carer, talking about why these changes are important. So the first change that we're looking for is for young adult carers to be formally identified as a vulnerable group, which would give them full entitlement to the 16 to 19 bursary. We heard from Jules in York about the great practice that York College has in place around financial support for young adult carers, but we also know from our work that that is inconsistent throughout the country. In many parts of the country, young adult carers don't get access to the discretionary element of the bursary, or measures are put in place that effectively penalise them if they have difficulties attending learning because of their caring responsibilities. So we think that this change would overcome those difficulties and give all young adult carers good access to the 16 to 19 bursary. Secondly, we would like young adult carers aged 16 to 21 to be exempt from the 21-hour rule in the benefit system. Currently, young adult carers lose their carers allowance, which is £62.10 per week, if they participate in learning for more than 21 hours per week. Many further education courses require full-time participation, which really leaves young adult carers in a catch-22 situation. And given that many have lost out on several years of learning, we think this situation needs to be redressed. Young adult carers deserve carers allowance, and they deserve the right to learn in the same way as other young people. And we think this policy change would make a huge difference. And the final policy change that we're really looking for is giving young adult carers flexible access to apprenticeships and traineeships to boost their skills and careers. Currently, Skills Funding Agency guidance states that apprenticeships should be at least 30 hours per week, except in exceptional circumstances. Unfortunately, they don't define exceptional circumstances and they don't collect any data. So therefore, many young adult carers end up missing out on access to apprenticeships and traineeships. And apprenticeships in particular, we think, can provide young adult carers with access to skills. So they're the three changes that we're looking for. I'd now like to ask Charlotte, please, to play the short film. Thank you. Wrong film. I think Charlotte's just finding the right one now.
I've cared for my mum all the way from 8 years old, and like I say, it has got...
Oops, we seem to have a hitch. I possibly may have said the same film twice.
Sorry, Nicola, it says policy asks.
Okay, but it's not actually that film. Let's see if we can play it from the internet. Just bear with us for a moment, please.
Shall I look for that? You can...
Yeah, that would be great, Charlotte, if you could do that. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully we'll get a chance to hear Emily speaking about the three policy changes in just a moment. In the meantime, I would just like to mention the Festival of Learning Awards, which the Learning Work Institute is running at the moment. Festival of Learning was previously known as Adult Learners Week, and is a great way of celebrating the achievements of individual learners, of tutors, of projects and different types of provision, and of employers who make an outstanding contribution to staff training and development. As I said, the awards nominations are now open. All information can be found on the Festival of Learning website, which hopefully you should be able to see through this link. Okay. And yeah, we're really keen to invite nominations from anybody really, but it would be particularly fantastic to receive some young adult carer nominations to really recognise the challenges that they face and the adversity that they often overcome. So please check out the Festival of Learning website. Okay, Charlotte, are we able to find the film?
Yeah, so I'm just about to put the link to the film on YouTube in the chat box. So here it is.
Okay.
So I'm sorry we won't be able to put it into the actual webinar, but everyone can go out and watch it.
Okay, so you can watch that after the webinar.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Charlotte. And I think that just about brings everything to a conclusion. So now is the time for discussion and questions. And I believe you can pose questions verbally or via the chat group. Is that correct, Yaya?
That's right. So if you'd like to ask a question, please unmute your microphone and go ahead. And an alternative to that is to use a chat, which is on the bottom of your screen. It would be 1, 2, third command from the right. I think it's the same on your screen as on mine, and that's where you can ask a question. So do go ahead. In the Manage Participants screen command, you can also raise hand, and then we will be aware that you're waiting to ask your question and we'll invite you. Hello, Patricia.
Thanks for joining us. Hi, Patricia. Would you like to ask a question?
Thank you, Rupinder. Bye-bye. Nicola, whilst we're waiting for colleagues either to raise hand or to ask a question. Oh, we've got Rhiannon, so I'll pause. Rhiannon, would you like to ask a question?
Yep, hello, how can I help?
Hello, is it Rhiannon talking to us?
Yes, Rhiannon, that's, the funding is literally just our bursary allocation that we get from the government. It's not subsidised by the college, it's just the decisions that we make in terms of how we distribute that funding. So we just make sure that our policy will cover that additional support for our carers. The downside of that, because it's government funding, because it's ring fenced, is, like I said, think students who are apprentices, students who are on full cost programs or in higher education can't access that funding. So there are limits, but the majority of our programs are 16 to 19 further education, so the majority of our students can access that. Does that answer your question? Yeah, it's just down to how we prioritise our funding. So we have that's the standard funding that's based on household income and the costs that students have to face, so travel costs and equipment are generally the highest costs until they get to over 19, they've got childcare. And then within our policy, we specify that students who are carers, students that are parents, students that are homeless or in temporary accommodation, and students whose families have got high levels of debt are our priority groups that get additional funding. We run the
Jules, may I please ask you that before you respond, you just repeat the question for anyone who can't see the chat.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
So there's a question in terms of how long we've been running the drop-in through the carer centre and the uptake that we get. It is a monthly drop-in that we have, and it's been running for 3 or 4 years, I think. It's been going quite a while now, and the statistics that we have from that do show that we discover, if you like, we have at least one new carer discloses themselves to the drop-in every time there's a drop-in. So every month we discover new carers, just because we have those people out there, which is absolutely brilliant for us, obviously. And there's a question there in terms of whether we have a very high government allocation for because of disadvantaged students. York seems like an affluent area, but it isn't. We've got pockets of very severe deprivation. I think our funding is quite generous, and overall our bursary allocation across all areas is about £800,000, and we have about 4,000 students, 4,500 students that would have maybe a few more when you include the part-time that have access to that. If you compare that to somewhere like Sheffield, where they've got millions of pounds, but obviously even higher levels of deprivation, then I do think we do quite well, definitely, and that means that we've got that flexibility to make those decisions for our priorities.
Thank you very much, Jules. We do have another 10 minutes or so for the question time, if colleagues do have any further questions, either through the chat or please unmute your microphone and talk to us. Laura, in her presentation, as well as Jules, raised an issue of capturing the caring roles within the student cohort and the challenges that may present when we monitor learners' data. And I'd just like to bring to your attention an event that is happening on the 10th and 11th of May at the City Lit. in London. It is a joint effort between Learning and Work Institute and City Lit, and it is to really persuade funders to support more meaningful and more appropriate data monitoring that learners and providers can relate to in a more appropriate way, but that can also lead to some real differences in the provision and creating spaces in which people can be present as themselves. So further information about this on the Equalities Toolkit website that I mentioned at the beginning, which should you I'll email with other information that we will email to you as a follow-up from today's event.
Thanks, Shaya. We've just had a chat input from Patricia, which I'll read out in case not everybody can see it. Hi, we run the Learning World project for 19 plus in Kent. Many of the participants have learners who would benefit from engagement in learning to help with mental health issues, e.g. stress or depression. We are running a pilot to identify people who are willing to engage in learning and report back on their progression. This is to identify the benefit of learning on mental health, so the government put resources into this area in the future. That sounds really interesting, Patricia. If you've got any more information that you're able to share with us about that, I'd certainly like to know more about it, and we could put some information out to our networks if that would be of interest.
I'm just aware that it takes a little bit for people to type into the chat, so we'll allow a few more
That's
minutes.
great, Patricia, thank you. Yes, if you could send some information over, that'd be brilliant, and we can get it sent out to all of the participants here today. That's great. Just one final thing to say. At the moment, the government is consulting on a new carer strategy. The consultation was published in mid-March. It takes the form of an online survey, and the consultation closes at the end of June, I believe. So we're really keen to get as many responses that reflect young adult carers' needs as possible, specifically measures that would improve their access to learning and employment. So I'd really encourage everybody to look at that consultation and call for evidence. Like I said, it can be accessed via the Department of Health's website, but we can send the link out after this webinar.